This is the first Blue Light Comms Hub webinar, and these will cover a huge range of topics in the near future. We've got plans for recruitment, violence against women and girls, county lines, etc., all the pertinent topics. And I'm really glad, really happy that so many people have signed up, and would really like to see these webinars as a common feature of your calendar, even a common and a permanent feature of your calendar. So we're going to keep these going. So a considerable amount of work has gone into setting these up and the production of the content for them. So I would really like you to share it with your colleagues if you can. And on that note, if there's any topics that you think you'd like us to cover, just please discuss it with me or the CAN team, and we'd love to hold those for you. Don't forget, this is all free. It's free training. It's free experience for you. So just let us know, and we'll make that happen. So I am Martin. I was a police officer for around 15 years, working mostly in child abuse, counter-terrorism and cyber. And I'm now the Blue Light comms lead for CAN. So I can talk COP, I can talk cyber, and now I can talk comms. So I'm happy to discuss things with everybody. But today we're discussing flood preparedness, which I can't talk. So it's a topic that I know little about, but I did do some disaster preparation work as a counter-terrorism security coordinator, a CT SECO, but tons of murky river water wasn't necessarily a terrorist attack vector. So I'm all ears for all this. We're all learning, and that's why we're all here. So we have a range of experts for you, and hopefully by the end of the seminar, we'll get a grasp of the impact of flooding, what happens if we do nothing in terms of preparedness, and then what happens if we can all be effective. Now, having been in the private sector now for a few years, and previously, and obviously the public sector, I can tell you that your superpower as public sector workers is the ability to borrow off each other and to share ideas, share personnel, and share resource. So with that in mind, during these webinars, we're really keen on engagement, really keen on questions. Just write them in the chat or put your hand up, and at the end of the presentations, we'll get a chance to discuss with the experts in this field. So the experts in the field leads me nicely on to James, who's ready and waiting. So he works for Turn the Page Comms and is the former chair of FirePRO, which represents communicators in the Fire and Rescue Service. And James, if I'm correct, you're going to be discussing how people in a region can get up-to-date information and have a single source of truth for that local community. So please, James, off to you.
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell in terms of what I will be covering. So I'm just going to share my screen. Hopefully that is now something that people can see. Yeah, so thank you, for joining us on this sunny Friday afternoon. Probably the first one we've had really this sort of spring or this year so far. So thanks for joining the call. Yeah, and as Martin said, I'm just going to kind of put a bit of context, I suppose, around our flooding, our preparations for flooding, where we're currently at, what frameworks are in place to help us, and thinking about how we can be best prepared as communicators as and when the time comes and flooding hits, as it so regularly does, in the years that have been passing in recent times. So just by way of introduction, so Turn the Page is me now, which is a communications consultancy that does communications and campaigns across the blue light sector and the public sector as a whole. But in my former life, as Martin touched on, I was external communications manager at Hampshire Fire Rescue Service for 6 years. During that time, I was the deputy chair of the Hampshire Warning and Informing Group. And as Martin mentioned, also chair of the FirePRO Comms network for 2 years as well. And since leaving Blue Light World and in-house world, I've continued to work with, a number of fire services, a number of blue light services and councils as well, doing everything from recruitment to safety campaigns to training as well. So yeah, very sort of, sort of extensive blue light background. And one of my core memories really from that time, working in fire and working in Hampshire, was the winter of 2013-2014, officially the wettest winter on record. In some areas there were more than 3 times the average rainfall that winter. And these iconic pictures of the Somerset levels were just everywhere, at that time, that winter. The Somerset levels were particularly badly affected, but by no means the only part of the country that was badly affected. In fact, most of the south was really badly affected by floods at some point that winter. So what stays with me from that time? Well, the fact it was so relentless, so exhausting. I'm sure so many of you on this call will have been dealing or will have dealt with floods that are very, it's a very long lasting response. It can be if the weather continues to be bad. And of course, once the response phase is over, the recovery phase that kicks in can also last, many weeks and months as well, which continues to sort of put pressure on comms teams and on organisations as well. Now, no doubt we'd like to think of that winter of 2013-2014 as a bit of a freak occurrence, but sadly it's not, as I'm sure many of you will testify from recent years. Winters are only getting wetter and are only going to get wetter. 7 of the UK's 10 wettest winters have been in the past 35 years, as you can see. And the average UK winter is 15% wetter, than it was 50 years ago. So, you can see the trend from that graph that winters are just continuing to get wetter and will continue to get wetter. Met Office projections suggest that the average UK winter by the end of this century will be 11% wetter than they were back in 1980. So, there's a trend that's only going one way. It's not a problem that's going to get any better. So really, we shouldn't be getting caught by surprise every winter when we're dealing with flooding. So can we be better prepared for it when it does arrive? Well, I'm sure there's no need for me to really remind anyone on this call about the legal duty that exists for Category 1 responders in terms of our duty to warn, inform and advise people in the event of emergencies. It's our duty as public bodies to be a source of accurate, timely information, when emergencies like flooding hit. But it's definitely worth considering, I think, the wording of the Act, and particularly the warn, inform and advise part, and where we put the emphasis in our communications when it comes to warning and informing. How much warning are we doing, as well as the informing and advising part? And I'm sure many of you will have also made use of this and be aware of it. So this is the Government Communication Service's primer framework for emergency responding, released a few years back, and I'm sure, like I say, many of you will be making use of it, drawn from best practices across the public sector and sort of giving tools and templates for communications and how to plan and respond during a crisis. So the planning part is about very much having your communications plan ready and knowing where it is when you need it. Rehearsing about testing in advance, working with partners and building those really important relationships that you need in calmer times. Implementing, so very much about getting it right from the start, which is really, really important, getting on the front foot when emergencies and flooding hit. Maintaining, so flooding, as we've kind of already touched on, looking back at that 2014 example, can be a real test of stamina and resilience. So can we maintain our response and also sort of continue to support our teams during that? Evaluation, are we measuring what's getting through and what's not? Can we do that in real time, and can we refine our approach as we go through? And then the recovery part as well, helping to rebuild trust, confidence, and continuing to also be able to kind of communicate with people after flooding has gone. So when we break down that framework, there are probably some key questions that we maybe should be asking ourselves as organisations, as local resilience forums. So with regard to planning, how much are we actually addressing prevention? You know, prevention is better than cure. So are we preparing people well in advance in peacetime, giving them the information they need to be prepared? In rehearsing, are we one step ahead? Can we get one step ahead? Do we have messages and content prepared, ready to go for when flooding hits? Implementation. How quickly can we switch on the comms when we need to? When flooding or weather warnings arrive, how quickly can we turn them on? And speed is very much mentioned in the GCSE materials actually around this part. And also, have we got a single source of truth established? Can we get a single source of truth established quickly? Maintaining. How can we keep a consistent flow of information going while also bearing in mind the resilience of our teams as well? And what is the reach of that comms as well? Are our organic channels, our organic social channels and online channels going to be enough? The evaluation. How visible is the data? Have we got the data? How visible is it? And have we got those opportunities to adapt and refine and optimize our comms as we go along? And recovery as well. Are we able to keep that flow of information going when our teams might be flagging during that recovery phase? If there's been a very long lasting response, are we able to continue to keep it going during the recovery phase? And some of those questions, you know, sort of cover and highlight some of the pain points, the traditional consistent pain points maybe that we find when a flooding response is needed. You know, the question of who is leading on the comms, who's taking the lead. It might be different people, different agencies take the lead at different times, you know, in the initial response and the recovery phase as well. So really understanding who's leading. Have they got the capacity? Have they got enough capacity to be able to do that job? The agreement and alignment of messages, making sure that, you know, everyone is, you know, saying the same thing and having that single source of truth. Creating the content to go out as well, you know, being able to share with people during the response. The single source of truth, which we've mentioned, having that one, you know, that one presence where people can find up-to-date information, accurate information. And again, team resilience and capacity as well. You know, are we able to keep going with our response with the teams, you know, and the size of teams that we've got? So is there a way of us being able to take an approach that perhaps not only takes into account those questions relating to the primer framework, but also these pain points as well? Well, we believe that yes, there is, if we consider some of these approaches. And these are all about potentially putting you really in control of comms at every stage. So you feel prepared, well prepared in advance. And a lot of this can be activated, you know, at the touch of a button. So, you know, starting off with that sort of peacetime, I guess, peacetime period, you know, when there's no flooding, you know, when it's, you know, when the weather is calm. So, you know, it should be no shock to us, you know, as we've already said, when flooding hits. So actually, we should be constantly reminding and nudging people, even if it's at a very low level, especially people living in flood risk areas, to be prepared and providing them with information. So very much about that warning part of the warning and informing. And then when weather warnings hit or we're warned of severe weather, being able to get widespread messaging out there, messaging that can reach almost an entire region, you know, an entire single region or area, and also being able to share that single source of truth, you know, in anticipation of there being severe weather and of there being flooding. Then when it comes to responding, so when flooding hits, if flooding hits, being able to respond and being able to switch on a stream of consistent pre-prepared messages instantly and being able to continue that going throughout the response. And that could be really important as well in terms of freeing up our teams to deal with other issues, deal with other comms, you know, the media response, the dreaded VIP visits, if it gets to that point. And that can, you know, really help to maintain resilience as well. And then during the recovery phase, being able to quickly and easily change tack, change the message, and emphasize where support and advice can continue to be found. So taking a proactive approach, considering some of the things that that we've just talked about here, are ways of potentially getting really well pre-prepared in advance in anticipation of any flooding happening. And then, yeah, just one last point really about considering our channels in relation to warning and informing. For so long, of course, Twitter or X is, has been such a core part of warning and informing plans. That sort of instant messaging, instant notification, sort of function that it gives us. But of course, Twitter and X is now a real subject of debate around comms teams. Some teams, some blue light agencies are considering, moving on to other things, or actually have moved on to other things. Reuters did an investigation last summer that found around a quarter of blue light agencies are actively reviewing their presence on X. Some of them have already left. Some of them have mothballed it. Perhaps only really there to keep it, perhaps for warning and informing purposes. But I think it's definitely a good time to ask the question of what are your core channels going to be? And actually, it's very much about reach as well. How many people in your regions, in your areas, are those channels reaching? And again, is there a way that we can reach more people as well? So the problem of flooding, it's not going anywhere. The winters are getting wetter. It's likely to get worse. And so I guess we need to ask ourselves, as organisations, as local resilience forums, can we be better prepared, and can we respond more effectively when flooding does hit?
Today, James gave this brilliant sort of intro to some of the challenges, and then has tasked me or us with coming up with some hopefully useful insight and tactics that can help you plan and be more prepared. I'm just going to quickly cover some of the common challenges, particularly around amplification, some principles that we might like to use as a filter or to adopt, and then some tactics that we've put together. Can I just check everyone can see my slides? Is that right, Martin? Yep. So, as James was sort of alluding to, it can be that teams find themselves a little bit on the back foot, that they're dealing with lots of competing information sources, and maybe that sort of nagging uncertainty in the back of their minds of have we actually managed to communicate with everyone, not just publish, but reach everybody. And this is where these sort of principles become quite useful. We want to make sure that everything we do is inclusive, or that we don't create inequalities through our channel choices, and that everything we do saves in some way time, cost, or lives, and that everything that we do is also demonstrable. We can prove what we've done in terms of reach and in terms of impact. So to filter those, or to define those a little bit more, really should be making sure that 90+% of any target audience is reached, and reached frequently, with a mix of human, physical and digital media, and that media is less comprehensive and technical and much more accessible, understandable, story-based and action-inspiring. We need to make sure that what we're doing with communications isn't slowing things down, wasting money, or impacting our ability to act as organisations. Or to put it another way, everything we do is saving time, it saves cost of late intervention, and it also helps accelerate efforts to support people and recover. And then we really need to be able to demonstrate with data that we've reached everybody, that they've not just been communicated at, but there's interaction and people are responding to what we're asking them to do, which then hopefully enables us to demonstrate impact through reduced negative impact, or avoiding the cost of negative impact. Now, on that reach point, in any given area, we can create one of these models for you, but it will show the population and the kinds of channels that they're using. Now, this is really important to be able to model and plan communications. And wherever you are, you'll be able to see that you have a sort of 18+ population, but you'll then be able to sort of geo-populate floodplains, and maybe then high-risk areas. And the wonder of programmatic advertising and tools like Letterbox, which you'll see in a moment, means that you can very quickly work out what it's going to cost to be in front of everybody. And I just want to sort of show here the power of targeting. If, as sometimes we've said, the target audience is everybody, to reach 800,000 odd people 7 times, you're looking at about £30,000. But if you then geo-target that with physical and digital, you can reduce that significantly and increase the frequency. So getting to 48,000 people 20 times becomes much more palatable. And then you might even want to do a frequency of 50, so you could do 1 time a week. People in high risk areas are getting targeted, and you can see that the cost per the overall cost goes down considerably. So making sure that you're using the right channels and you're modeling and targeting correctly means that you can actually plan to reach the vast majority of the target audience and have pre-prepared costs and plans in place. And so James sort of asked us to look at some of the things we might be able to do. So we sort of separated out into three preparedness tasks. One is a sort of always-on peacetime risk reduction or risk preparedness element. The next is the single point of information burst. So at the moment of an event occurring, you're able to flood, excuse the phrase, the online space with signposting to the single point of information. And then there's the long-term, we're open for business recovery. This is how things are coming back online. These are the time frames to reduce frustration and probably reduce interaction. And so just to look at those in a little bit more detail, the at-risk audience, before an event, it's much easier to help people understand that it's their risk. This is how you can protect yourself. These are the sorts of plans you can have in place, and create user experiences that enable them to verify to you that they understand this and that they've got a plan and they're going to investigate some of the measures you're maybe promoting. And you can do that and reach them across news, social, and even search. If people are searching for insurance, potentially flood barriers and so on, you can intercept them in where they are online. That's in the digital sphere. Obviously, you can also then send them direct mail, very, very targeted to specific geographies. And we also recommend using the council's owned channels. So, for example, remarketing to people that have recently interacted with council tax content and are located in a high-risk geo would be a really useful audience and a clever use of council data to target those people and engage them with preparedness comms. And these campaigns need to be always on, low investment over a long period, with very specific geo remarketing, direct mail, and sometimes, if you have it, out of home owned by the council before high risk times. So that's something that you can switch on now, and that will dramatically reduce stress levels and frustration if and when these events occur. The second tactic is the event triggered. So this is something that needs to be prepared beforehand, modelled against the audience, and it is about establishing that single point of information, a single trusted source of information. So you will have all of your agencies feeding into this one place, probably a URL or maybe even a social media feed. And then what we can do is reach everybody in your area multiple times, quite high frequency, within 12 to 24 hours. So you can press the button, and this ensures everyone will, across social media, news, and everywhere, be consistently directed to your single point of information, maybe recommended to bookmark it and so on. And they also then can understand that that's where everything's going to be, and that all other information they see will be coming from that place, so they know where that source is. And again, here, email is very, very powerful. And also the council-owned estate can be really powerful too. Websites, social channels, physical and digital owned channels. And this can be planned and ready to go before these events. In fact, it has to be. It won't work if you do it a few days afterwards. And then there's the opening up, the recovery, the new normal, however you choose to frame it. But thinking about people that need to use transport, people need to drive around, parents understanding what they can do and when, ensuring that people know where useful travel information is. In York, we've seen that they very quickly start communicating that businesses are open and ready to trade, even whilst the floodwaters are still there and maybe only just starting to recede from the area. So supporting the local economy and supporting an accelerated return to normal, safety considerations obviously paramount. And you can use that in a slightly slower way, but over news, social, video, inviting people through direct mail back to town centres, use of council email channels, and so on. It's a 1 month at least medium weight, and you need to be thinking about that probably whilst the moment you get a picture about what recovery might look like. So there's these sort of 3 elements which you can consider, and by designing all of these with measurable physical media and digital media, and creating user experiences that might help triage people through preparedness, you're able to show, firstly, that you've reached everybody, and you've reached everybody multiple times, and then also that you've enabled people to interact with content and therefore have had an impact. So it's not just broadcast, it's actual real engagement. And this is something at CAN that we are very passionate about: simple, accessible user experiences and not creating inequalities by not reaching people. And so hopefully with these approaches, you'll be able to move from the kind of high stress, high energy, but low or uncertain impact with some things that work, towards minimal, stressful, reactive, and have a high level of confidence that the communications that you're deploying both reach everyone and work and have the desired impact. So I would use this time to sort of ask yourself, in terms of this checklist, what's your level of confidence that you're going to have it in place? The addressing and the targeting consistently of the at-risk audience. Have you got your single point of information burst ready, primed, built, modelled, and signed off and ready to go? And do you have at least some ideas about some of the themes that you'd want to promote as you start to recover? We all know how busy comms teams are, particularly in emergency services, but also in councils. And that's why people like James and Turn the Page exist. If you're not confident you're going to have these things in place, he's here to help, and we would thoroughly recommend speaking to him. He's experienced, he understands, and he knows how to build these sorts of solutions for you. And so hopefully this approach and working together would mean that we can move away with that kind of publish and hope or publish and pray, probably not reaching everybody tactics, really having to react to a lot in the moment, and then being slightly unsure of how well we've served our residents, our populations, towards being able to demonstrate before events that everything has been communicated and people are engaging and preparedness is increasing, that you have things in your back pocket, your sort of strategic toolkit ready to switch on that will then reduce stress levels for your team and help with resilience. And then that beforehand, during and after events, you have proof of the efficacy of the actions that you've taken, and that you're able to deliver it. And then hopefully for you and your teams, a more Zen-like experience of the inevitable flooding that we expect each year. When James started talking about this, it reminded me very much of the NHS winter demand campaigns. It's no surprise that in November, December, January, A&E gets full. Yet I don't think we're good enough yet at instilling the behaviours in late summer, early autumn that protect us from that. So there are similarities from many of the areas that we've worked with. But really what it's about is taking the stress out of the situation, planning now, and being ready to prove what we do.
I'm happy to move on to Graeme, who will talk about how we bridge the digital divide and access the 6 to 9% of the population who are not online.
Hi there, everyone. Thank you, Martin, and thank you, JP, as well. I'll share my screen now. I'm hoping for a nod from someone if you can see that. Good. Hi, yes. So yeah, I'm Graeme Davidson. I work at Letterbox Distribution. We have been around since 1987. We started as a company basically delivering pizza, pizza leaflets, and doing resident magazines for councils and boroughs as well. Our company has now kind of evolved over the past few years to still be doing all of that stuff, but we're also doing a lot of crucial resident notifications now, as well as those borough-wide drops and like bespoke marketing materials. But now we're doing a lot of work with councils and highways and public health, where it's very bespoke little drops that we've got to do, and we do the print as well, getting that out to them. We have the ability in-house here to be able to print and distribute within 24 hours, of course, depending on the complexity of the job. And we've got over 100 distributors out there as well, delivering. So that's, every single week they can go out and they can do like 1,000 items a day, essentially, each. So you can do the numbers on that. Today, I'm just going to cover a flood awareness campaign that we did for Buckinghamshire County with their project Groundwater. And it's about the digital divide in there, about trying to reach those people, that may not be on, don't have access to the digital side of things. They won't have, just trying to educate them as well. Because what we're trying to do in this campaign is get people to sign up for an app, and it's a flood warning app. And they felt when they approached us that it might be a good idea to do it in a leaflet at first. So the challenge was, you've got this project Groundwater is working with communities in 6 local authorities, and it's also working alongside DEFRA and the Environment Agency. So within the Buckinghamshire area, there's actually 9 at-risk areas, and they're all very specific. It's quite dispersed. Some of it's quite rural. And once we mapped it, which I'll show you in a minute how we mapped this, it came to over 89,000 properties in total. They came to the decision of doing it as a leaflet because they thought it'd be the most economical way to reach everyone and get them to try and sign up and also raise awareness of groundwater. I know groundwater is a very specific type of flooding as well. I'm not an expert in groundwater, to be honest with you, so I can't really go into much detail on that, but I know it's when it sits beneath the plains basically, and it can rise up. So it's actually under the ground as you would expect it to be for groundwater. It is quite a complex job as well because groundwater comes up in many different areas. It's not where it comes in from, from a river as such. It can just come up from the ground anywhere. So it was quite widely dispersed, which made it quite difficult for the door drop as well. Our teams would have to go out to lots and lots of different areas within these 9 confined areas that they'd specified for us to do. And the mapping tool that we use is very helpful as well. And I'll actually just go on and show you the mapping tool now. So let me just flick onto this, if you don't see this. So this is the tool that we use internally, and it's also going to be launched externally in the next coming week. And basically this allows us to look at anywhere and map out property counts so that we can then get the print number of how many leaflets we need to print and deliver within a certain area. So for instance here, I'll just show you this for a start. We can also do things like layers where we can put on, for instance, the wards within the UK. So this is all the different types of wards we've got here, and you can click on one of them and it'll give you an instant property count. Or as we would have been doing with this one, is councils. So here is Buckinghamshire here, and we would have just immediately looked at all the different areas. Now I'll go on to the actual drawing tools themselves, so you can just see here, if I go into an area, this may well have been one of the areas that we're doing, and you can just draw a quick polygon around a certain area, and it gives you an instant count there. So the 600 properties, 596 are residential, there's 4 are business, and say for instance you could do it as well maybe as a radius around this part here, and you can do it as a 1 kilometre radius, which I'll try and get. There you go, bang on. And that gives you, so in that sear green area there, you can see there's 988 residential properties and 24 business. So this is how we got to the number, the 91,000, using our tool. I mean, basically, you can go on also then do, you know, letter, leaflet, newsletter, whatever type of comms it is you want to put on here, and then go to the delivery part of it too. Right through to actually, you know, that sends the job to us, and we will go out and do the deliveries after that. But that's just the tool shown for you for a second. We also use, when we're going through this, we use Jigmail. For those who don't know what Jigmail is a direct mail and door drop body, which measures the impact and outcomes of campaigns. So we can put in the numbers into Jigmail and see, you know, that's that 89,000 properties. And from Jigmail's previous research, they know that that leaflet will stay in the house for 6.35 days on average. It will have on average 3.6 views per person, and 1.05 people would view the leaflet in each household. So, you know, that then makes the number go up to 93,000, and that gives you a total campaign impact of 332,000. That's how many people will actually see the leaflet. We also helped to collaborate on the leaflet design with Buckinghamshire Council, with the Project Groundwater. We recommended that they put on the QR code there, and we gave them a tool so that they could measure every click on it, every time a camera's put in front of it, and takes them through to their website to sign up for the app. So we did that, and we worked with them to make this all very simple as well. So there's a, you know, this side of the leaflet, the back side of it there was designed to be so simple, just for people to walk through steps basically to sign up, and it worked very well. Another part of this to just mention as well, that when our teams go out to actually do the distribution, once we get that leaflet designed up, we do live tracking. So each distributor can wear a tracker. They can also wear a body cam if necessary. Some of our distributions that we do are very sensitive, basically, and it's good for them to have a body cam on, because then we can prove that the distribution has taken place. Somebody might dispute this, they haven't got something, we can show that they have. And also on the day, actually, it's for our internal account handlers. They can see where the people are. All those different colours there on the map, that is different distributors. So that's different people going around there. So they're covering a certain area, and they can all do about 1,000 properties in one day if it's quite densely populated. The outcome and the impacts from this was that we had, Project Groundwater had the QR code clicks, they had 1,414. So there's 1.5%, and they captured the details of 1,349. There was a bit of a problem, actually. The Project Groundwater told us afterwards, which was a shame, that there was a bit of a problem with the sign-up page. They put in too many options on it. So when they tried to sign up, there was far too many forms to be filled out, and lots of people dropped out. So the actual sign-up attempts there, you can see, is much higher than the completed sign-up. So they've learned something from this again, and that's why we're going to continue doing more campaigns with them. They said overall, Project Groundwater very happy, because the awareness of where they live and the propensity to have a groundwater flood has gone way up. Now they're looking to do more drops again to go for more sign-ups for the app. Again, it's like JP said, you have to do these campaigns multiple times so that people learn from them and really can get into it and understand what's going on. So far, the client is very pleased about it, and, you know, we can only see good things for the future. The app itself has only just been launched in like the past month or something, and I hope it really makes a difference for those communities out there. And that's it from me for now. I hope that's helpful.
Thanks, Graeme. There are some questions in the chat. JP, you've got a few, if you'd like to vocalise them yourself.
Yeah, great. I was going to ask, you're showing like how you could draw on that map.
Yeah.
But I know that councils, for example, will have data on people who receive certain sorts of care packages, or, you know, areas of deprivation. Can you upload your own data to Create Mail?
You can, yes. Yes, there's an
Okay,
upload
right.
option in there as well. So
Into
you can
that tool.
upload. Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's some, I don't know the technology behind it. There's something very advanced there that can read all the addresses, yeah. And it'll pinpoint them in the map. And then all you need to do at that point is select your letter type, upload your artwork. And then, you know, we can either post it or deliver it ourselves. So we've got our own teams, or we can use Royal Mail. And again, that depends on how rural it is, JP. If it's very rural, we would suggest, you know, going with Royal Mail.
Yeah. And where you have teams deployed, they've got body cams on, they've got trackers and things like that. Are they able to do other things other than just deliver letters? Like, could they keep an eye out for people that need help, or be some sort of feedback mechanism? I imagine that could be really useful in terms of understanding populations' duty of care, and maybe also monitoring conditions.
Yeah, they can. I mean, there's elements like that we've done in the past. Yeah, I mean, perhaps not the care side of it as such. I mean, I'm not sure how that legally would stand, but we've done things like having the body cams and be able to look in people's bins, for instance, and actually, you know, when we've done sort of bin campaigns where it may be food waste, or people aren't recycling correctly, so we're going around putting out leaflets for that, and they actually look in the bins, and then if it's not correctly recycling, they will give them a letter of warning from the council, for instance, you know, and that's something we've done quite often. Yeah, there is certain applications that the distributors can do.
Brilliant. Thank you
very much. So Rachel asks, we all hear horror stories of leaflets being dumped. What guarantees are there that the leaflets get delivered?
Well, that's why we've got the tracking. So, you know, we have, I mean, it was our company who actually introduced tracking way back when, you know, decades ago now, where that means that we've got peace of mind ourselves. We can watch it internally and see where the people are. And the body cams is that added value onto that as well, so that we can see people putting it through. So we have always been in the mind of, you know, if you're doing a campaign with us, we have to do it right, or you will never come back and work with us again.
Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Jack, if he's around. Jack Grasby, this is the Senior Comms Manager for Nottinghamshire Fire Rescue, and now current Chair of FirePRO. Jack.
Hello. Thank you, Martin.
Pleasure.
Thank you for having me. That's the first thing I'll say. As someone that doesn't consider himself to be very intelligent at all, it's a delight to be able to speak at things like this with intelligent souls such as yourself. So I'll just try and share my screen so you can see my slides. Is that working?
Yeah, we can see that.
Great start. Okay, so as you say, I'm Jack. Very fortunate to be Senior Comms Manager here in Nottinghamshire, and also more fortunate to work with some great people on the FirePRO committee nationally. Also fortunate or unfortunate, depending on how you look at it. I have worked on quite a few extreme weather events. Obviously some talk of hot weather just then. I've been through quite a few bit of that. But today, obviously the theme is flooding, so I've been asked to talk a little bit about how we responded to Storm Babette, which was October 2023. In terms of what I'm going to cover, we'll try and keep it very, very brief to keep to time, but obviously a little bit of an incident overview, a little bit around what went well in terms of communicating it, and a little bit more around lessons learned. So that's the stuff we didn't go so well, but we don't call it that. We say lessons learned instead. Sticking with that rule of three, there's three pictures on the screen, which I've put intentionally on there. And I think I just wanted to illustrate, I guess, before I go and say any more, that you know, there are different ways I think that flooding can affect people. Certainly from my experience, I kind of see it from a headquarters building, or, you know, supporting incident operations on the ground. But certainly I haven't been unfortunate enough to be on the other end of it. And I think it's important to remember that there is a reason why we do what we do when it comes to flooding. On the left, obviously, hopefully some of your screens are slightly bigger than mine, but that's two dogs being rescued from a flood from a house. Obviously that's cute picture, that's not nice to see, but everyone is going to look at the dogs and enjoy that. But I think, you know, there probably is an element there of they could have maybe got out themselves. The middle picture is a bit of an odd one. I'm not sure why our staff are smiling at the Land Rover Discovery that's in the drink behind them, but I think they're just, you know, showing that they are happy at work, which will allow that. We'll take that. But again, that is a nightmare for the owner of that car, but nobody was hurt. And then the right hand side is probably more pertinent, I think, because that shows something a bit more serious. That's 2 ladies being escorted away from a flooded house, and obviously, as well as the kind of trauma and embarrassment that does come with that, they've also got to put up with now a hell of a lot of paperwork and insurance and things like that, and they'll have nowhere to stay that night. So there's a real impact, and I just thought it would be worth covering that off. So in terms of communicating storm, Babette, another thing I want to clarify is it certainly wasn't just us, me and my team that communicated it. I think it affected the whole country. I think someone told me it was one of the most, I think, the 3rd wettest independent 3-day period of rain for England and Wales since 1891, which is a year I never saw because I'm not that old. And I think, I just want to be clear that it was something that a lot of people dealt with. It certainly wasn't just us. I think, but more locally in terms of painting the picture for my service. There's some pictures as we go through the deck. Obviously, you can see the impact of it visually. We attended 40 flooding related incidents, or I've got that the wrong way around on the slide. But when I say incidents, that doesn't mean it was just 40 people impacted. One street might be one incident. So obviously, we've led 100 people to safety, evacuated 200 people. It was a big multi-agency response from us. I think just looking at the timeline, it kicked off Saturday the 21st of October and then ran through Wednesday the 25th of October, and then on that Saturday when it started there was a major incident declared. So again, that just shows the scale of it. Lots of different agencies involved, and it impacted lots of people as well. In terms of communicating it, there's always a lot to do, and it's not an easy task, and I think there's been some really good presentations that I've just observed and listened to around how we can do that. But in terms of what we did, as a fairly traditional service and team, we lent heavily on the press. That's obviously something that comms teams across the country will do a lot. They were very determined. They were very into this story, understandably. And I think we kind of worked well with them as a two-way street to get our messages across to people affected. We used our established channels, our digital channels, our email list, our own social channels, and then I think importantly, which is huge, we obviously work together as an LRF and with multiple agencies. So we kind of combined our messaging as a comm cell across those agencies to maximise reach. So we've got 24,000 followers on Twitter, for example. The police have got 160,000. So that's just one very small example of how I think working together to amplify the messaging can be effective. And we use our staff and our counsellors. We have an authority that governs us. They are carrier pigeons for us. They can share messages in their groups and their networks, and we encourage our staff to do that. And obviously, even if it's just our staff telling the family members, that's still a message they are passing on. And we all know how quick kind of your WhatsApp messages can get forwarded to different people. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good. And then obviously we have boots on the ground, and a big challenge for any service in moments like this is we have thousands, tens of thousands of homes, 100,000 of residents. There's not 1.4 million in Nottinghamshire. Not all affected by this, thankfully, but when you are, it isn't always that easy to get, particularly, the more older residents, maybe not on social media, for example, or, in some more rural areas, you may not be able to reach them as easy. So something we did after learning from previous incidences, we did get our staff on the ground as well in affected areas to go and knock on doors and things like that. I think we did a decent job, but it's not easy. It's a huge challenge, and I think, I think something that JP said around publish and pray, I would say, yeah, we probably still do take that approach. I think there's definitely stuff we can do better. In terms of stuff we did well, I think we, as organisations, stood up our local resilience forum protocols pretty quick. As a comm cell, we came together very quickly and worked together to kind of amplify our messaging I've just talked about, and I think that's a real positive. We told stories well. I've put some pictures up already. I don't think we shared the one with them smiling with the car that widely for good reason, but I think the point remains we had people on the front line, we had videos coming back, we had photos coming back, and that was able to help us tell stories of the incidents we were dealing with, paint those pictures, and then get our messages across. We worked across digital channels, across the press, and boots on the ground to, I think, hit a big chunk of the people we needed to. And I think something that is a positive for us is that we have that we have a pre-existing comms cell in Nottinghamshire, so we talk all the time, and that means that it's not a surprise, not a challenge really, to bring us together when something like this happens. In terms of lessons learned and stuff we could probably do better, I think probably just a few points from me. I think I've already touched on it. There is a gap. There's been a bit of talk around evaluation. How can we show that we are hitting people? That's not something we're brilliant at in these moments. We just try and get our messages out there as much as we can, to tick some boxes really and try our best. I think in terms of evaluating it, we can be better. In terms of, I put follow the leader, but who's the leader? I think that's always a challenge you find as local authorities. Do the council lead on it? Do the fire service lead on it? We're the ones with boats out. The police tend to lead on a lot of things. Do they lead on this? I don't know. And I don't think we've fully established that. And that is a challenge, because when you're doing your comms side of it, everyone's kind of waiting a little bit. Particularly councils maybe aren't as used to emergency response as I am or my team is. So I think it's interesting the pace at which different people work at. And obviously for me, I've put there, don't be blasé about warnings. Well, the best time to get a flood messaging out is not when the flood's happened. I think it's a bit late. I think it needs to be when it's approaching. People need to prepare for a flood. It's not sort of like a fire where in that moment you need to run away from it. It's if your house has been flooded and I come and say, oh, your house has been flooded, be careful, a little bit late. So I think, we can all maybe in common be a bit blasé around weather warnings. I think that's something we can possibly do better. And then just some stuff there and be proactive about the reactive. We know what's coming. We get weather warnings. We know at some point next year there'll be a flood that affects the whole country. Certain areas will be affected. We know which ones. I think there's probably more we can do in peacetime to prepare. And I suppose the last point is always on expect the unexpected. Flooding's becoming more and more political, certainly in my world, in terms of funding, in terms of agencies that respond to flooding and things like that. And I think, there was a story there that, I ended up dealing with some political stuff because allegedly we couldn't deal with the incidents we were called to, which wasn't true. But again, you think you're trying to deal with an incident, you think everyone's flowing in the right direction. There's always somebody ready to turn it into political things. That's just another comms point. And that's me.
I want to thank everybody for coming, and thank you everyone for participating. That's everybody, including the presenters. If we've missed anything, very happy to have a conversation. Let me know. If you want us to do any other themes of webinars, again, please let me know. We will, at the end of this, share the recording and share selected slides. So please share with your colleagues. Please share any future invites for your colleagues. And I look forward to seeing you all again very soon. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.